It was 2:13 a.m. when I received the message. I was sitting on the couch, my phone in my hand, staring at the blank screen. I hadn't been able to sleep all night. My thoughts kept racing in circles, like a song that wouldn't stop playing on repeat. The whole evening had been strange, but it was that message that truly set everything in motion. It came out of nowhere, just a single line, no explanation, no context. I'm not coming home tonight. I'll be staying at Sarah's. Don't wait up. I read it 3 times. 4. Each time, it felt like my stomach was sinking deeper. I hadn't heard from her all night. No calls, no texts. And now this, an abrupt message, no explanation, no apology. Just like that, she was gone. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't a big deal. Maybe she was out with her friends. Maybe she just needed some space. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Lydia didn't do this. Not without a reason. Not without saying something more than that cold, dismissive text. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I was suddenly wide awake, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I thought about calling her, asking if everything was all right, if something had happened. But what if she was just out having a good time, and I was overreacting? The last thing I wanted was to come off as needy or paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The feeling that something was slipping through my fingers, something I couldn't quite grasp. I spent the next few hours staring at my phone, waiting for another text, waiting for some kind of answer. But nothing came. It wasn't like her. We were married. Everything should have been fine. If she wanted to go out, she could have told me. But instead, she sent me a message like I was just some stranger she owed nothing to. I paced around the apartment. My mind kept flashing back to little things I'd noticed over the last few weeks. The way she'd been more distant, more guarded. She'd been spending more time at the gym, coming home late, telling me she was busy when I tried to make plans. I brushed it off at first. I told myself it was just the pressures of life catching up to her. But now it felt like all those little moments were leading up to this. I walked over to the window, looking out at the empty street below. The city was quiet, peaceful even, but inside, I felt a storm brewing. A cold, unsettled feeling gnawed at my insides. I checked the time. 4:30 a.m. I needed to know what was happening. I couldn't just sit here and wait. But what could I do? Call her? It felt wrong. She had made it clear she didn't want to talk, didn't want me to know where she was. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking it. But that's when I made a decision. I got in the car. Driving through the city streets at this hour felt strange, like I was moving in a dream. Everything was still, the world outside dark and quiet, but my mind was racing. I had no idea where she might be, but the longer I thought about it, the more certain I became that something wasn't right. I drove past bars and clubs, checked the places she'd mentioned in passing conversations. Nothing. Every place I thought she might be was dark, closed, empty. I drove for hours. No sign of Lydia. I was about to give up when something caught my eye. A parking lot I hadn't noticed before. The lights were dim, but there were a few cars parked at the far end, including a black SUV I didn't recognize. I pulled over and parked a little ways down the street, trying to be discreet. My heart was pounding now. Every instinct in me told me to leave, to drive away and not look back. But I couldn't. I needed to know where she was, who she was with. I got out of the car, moving slowly, trying not to draw attention to myself. The parking lot was nearly empty except for the SUV and a few scattered cars. But then, from the shadows, I saw a figure moving. It was her. She was walking, not alone, but with someone. A man. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They stopped in front of a dark alleyway. She looked up at him, and he leaned in. Then, as if on cue, they kissed. The world felt like it was spinning around me. My legs turned to jelly. I stood there, paralyzed, watching them. It wasn't just the shock of seeing her with another man. It was the realization that everything I thought I knew about my wife, about our marriage, had just shattered. Lydia had been hiding something. And now, in the dead of night, everything came crashing down. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen, stuck in place as I watched Lydia and this man in the parking lot. Everything I thought I knew about my wife, our life together, was now hanging by a thread. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, the blood rushing in my ears. I was barely breathing, trying to keep myself hidden in the shadows, but I couldn't look away. She had kissed him. My wife. The woman I thought I knew better than anyone. She was kissing another man. And it wasn't just a peck on the cheek. No, This was the kind of kiss that only happens between people who've shared something far deeper than a fleeting moment. I wanted to shout, to confront them both right then and there. But what would that accomplish? What could I say? How could I even process this? My mind raced, going in a million directions at once. I felt my stomach twist into knots as they pulled away from each other. Lydia smiled at him, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. I considered taking a picture, recording the moment for proof, but what would I even do with it? What was I really trying to accomplish? Could I even confront her? I didn't know if I was ready for whatever the truth was. I felt sick. I thought about turning around and leaving, going back to the safety of our apartment, pretending this night never happened. But I couldn't. I had to know more. I had to understand why she was doing this. Lydia and the man started walking toward the entrance of a small, dimly lit building near the alley. I stayed behind, keeping my distance, my mind clouded with confusion and anger. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Was this something recent? Or had she been hiding this from me for much longer than I realized? They stopped just outside the door of the building. Lydia said something to him, and he laughed, a soft sound that I could barely hear from where I stood. Then, to my surprise, she kissed him again. A deep, lingering kiss. I could see the way he held her, the way she seemed to melt into his arms. My heart sank even further. It was clear now. This wasn't just some random, spontaneous thing. This was planned. This was something real. The door to the building opened, and they both disappeared inside, leaving me standing alone in the dark parking lot. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, unable to move. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, confusion, anger, pain. But mostly, I felt numb. I never expected this. I never thought Lydia would do something like this to me. We had our issues, sure, but who doesn't? We always work through things. At least, I thought we did. But now I had to face the truth. The woman I loved, the woman I thought was mine, had been lying to me. She had been keeping secrets. She was hiding a whole part of her life, a part that didn't involve me. I don't know how long I stood there, but when I finally gathered the strength to move, I walked back to my car. I didn't know what I was going to do next. All I knew was that everything had changed. I was no longer the same man who had come to this parking lot just hours ago, and I wasn't sure if I ever could be again. I sat in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Lydia. I'll be home tomorrow. Don't worry about me. I stared at the words, my heart sinking further. She was acting like nothing had happened, like this was just another night out. But I knew everything had changed. It was only a matter of time before I confronted her. And when I did, I wasn't sure if our marriage would survive it. But the truth was out now. There was no turning back. The next morning, I couldn't focus on anything. I hadn't slept a wink, and my mind was constantly replaying the image of Lydia kissing that man. Over and over. Every time I closed my eyes, it was all I saw. I couldn't shake the image of her so carefree, so intimate with someone else. It felt like a betrayal of everything I believed we had. When Lydia finally came home, it was early in the afternoon. She walked through the door like nothing had happened, like she hadn't spent the night with another man. She smiled at me, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. I stood frozen in place. How could she act like nothing was wrong? Hey, babe, how's your day? She asked, dropping her bag on the couch, completely oblivious to the storm that was raging inside me. I didn't say anything at first. My mind was still racing, but I knew I couldn't just ignore it. I had to confront her. I had to know the truth. Where were you last night, Lydia? The words came out cold, almost like a demand, but I didn't care. I needed answers. She turned, surprised by the sharpness in my voice. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. What do you mean? She asked innocently, but I could see the faintest hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. Don't play dumb with me. I snapped, finally feeling the anger bubble up inside me. I saw you last night. You kissed him. You disappeared into that building. What the hell, Lydia? Her face turned pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if she was searching for the right words. I waited, every second feeling like an eternity. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but I could see the lie in her eyes. It was the same look people get when they're trying to cover something up. The same look people get when they know they've been caught. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. I saw you, Lydia. Don't lie to me. What's going on? I could feel my voice shaking, but I didn't care. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a step back, her hands fumbling nervously with her phone. I could tell she was trying to figure out how to play this, how to get out of the mess she had created. But there was no escape. The truth was right there, and I wasn't going to let her avoid it. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "It's not what you think," she said quietly, almost as if she were trying to convince herself more than me. "Then what is it?" I demanded, my frustration mounting. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been cheating on me." She flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might break down. But instead, she took a deep breath and straightened up, her gaze hardening. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, but it did. That was it. That was all she said. My mind was spinning. I couldn't believe it. She wasn't even apologizing, wasn't even remorseful. She was just explaining it away. "So what? You've been seeing him for a while?" I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. Her eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. She bit her lip, like she was trying to find the right words. "It wasn't planned. It was a mistake. I wasn't happy, Peter. You weren't there for me like you used to be. And then I met him, and things just happened." I felt like I had been slapped. I never saw this coming. I had always thought Lydia was the kind of person who would talk things through, not just go behind my back and hide things from me. "So what? That's your excuse? You weren't happy? What about me, Lydia? What about our life together?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. I was confused, and I thought I could handle it. But I couldn't. I should have told you, but I was scared of how you'd react. I could feel my chest tighten as her words sank in. Scared? Of how I'd react. I had always been there for her, always tried to support her. I felt like a fool. All those late nights, all those excuses, they had all been lies. "So what now?" I asked, my voice trembling. I wasn't even sure if I was ready for the answer. "What happens now, Lydia?" She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and something else, something I couldn't place. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely audible. "I need time. I think we both need time to figure this out." Time. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Time. Time to figure out what? That she could go back to him whenever she felt like it? Time to decide if she wanted me in her life? My hands balled into fists at my sides. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at her. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, in the same apartment where we'd shared so many memories, and watched as my entire world came crashing down around me. I couldn't look at her anymore. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd built my life with, was standing there, admitting she had betrayed me. Betrayed everything we had. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my mind around how she had kept this secret for so long, how she could so casually throw everything away. The silence between us was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could do this to me, but instead, I just stood there, staring at her. Every word she said only made the situation worse. Each sentence felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she repeated, her voice weak, pleading. "I never wanted to hurt you, Peter." But her words felt empty. She had already hurt me. She had hurt me more than I thought was possible. I had never felt more alone in that moment. The woman I trusted, the woman I loved, had been hiding a part of her life from me for God knows how long. "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice hoarse. "How long has this been going on, Lydia?" She hesitated. It was like she was trying to figure out how much of the truth she should reveal. It made my blood boil. "A few months," she said quietly, barely above a whisper. "I never wanted it to go this far. I thought it would just be a one-time thing, but then, I don't know. I got caught up in it." A few months. My stomach dropped. My mind was reeling, processing her words. A few months. She had been lying to me for that long. And all this time, I thought everything was fine. I had been living in a lie, in this perfect bubble that she had so carefully created around us. "What does that even mean, Lydia?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What does that even mean for us?" She shook her head, looking like she was about to cry, but no tears came. "I don't know. I'm so sorry, Peter. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if we can fix this." Fix this. Those words burned into my mind. Could we fix this? Could we go back to what we were? I didn't think so. Not now. Not after everything she had done. I felt like the ground beneath me was shaking. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle this. All I wanted was for her to explain everything. How it started, why it happened, why she thought this was okay. But she couldn't even give me that. She couldn't even give me the truth I needed. I can't believe you did this, I whispered, more to myself than to her. My mind was swirling. How could you? Lydia's face twisted in pain, but she didn't answer. Instead, she stepped toward me, reaching out for my hand, but I pulled away instinctively. She looked like she was going to say something, but the words caught in her throat. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said finally, her voice barely audible. I don't deserve anything from you, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed bitterly. You think that makes it better? You think that makes any of this okay? The tears that she had been holding back finally started to fall, but it did nothing to ease the anger inside me, the pain inside me. She had broken something that couldn't be repaired with apologies or tears. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I just stood there, feeling numb, unable to believe that the woman I loved had done something so careless. And all I could do was stare at her, feeling the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. I knew I had to make a decision. I had to decide what came next, but I didn't know if I was ready for that. How could I even begin to process this? How could I ever look at her the same way again? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spoke. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with you. Lydia's eyes filled with regret, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Not right now. I needed space. I needed time to think, to figure out if I could even live in the same house as her after everything that had happened. She nodded, looking defeated, and turned away. I understand. I'll give you the space you need. But as she walked away, I couldn't help but feel that something inside me had broken. Something that couldn't be fixed. Something that was lost forever. And I didn't know if I could ever get it back. The days after the confrontation felt like a blur. I couldn't bring myself to fully talk to Lydia, but at the same time, I couldn't avoid her either. We shared the same space, the same apartment, but it felt like we were strangers. The silence between us was suffocating, thick with things left unsaid. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of the lie she had been living. Every time she looked at me, I saw the guilt in her eyes, but it didn't change anything. It didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me. I threw myself into work, using the long hours to distract myself from the chaos of my personal life. But no matter how hard I tried to focus, my mind always drifted back to her. To him. To the life she had been leading behind my back. It was like a constant weight on my chest, and I couldn't escape it. One night, after another long day at work, I came home to find Lydia sitting on the couch, staring at the TV. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I stood there for a moment, watching her. She seemed so different. The woman I had once known, the woman I had shared everything with, now seemed like a shadow of herself. I wondered if she ever truly felt guilty for what she'd done, or if this was just her way of moving on. I wanted to yell, to ask her what was going through her mind, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I walked past her and went to the kitchen, trying to pretend everything was normal. But it wasn't. It hadn't been normal for a long time. A few hours passed, and still, neither of us said a word. The quiet was unbearable, but I didn't know how to break it. Part of me wanted to demand answers, to know every little detail about what had happened, but another part of me was terrified of what I might hear. What if she told me it had been going on for longer than she admitted? What if it wasn't just a mistake? Finally, as I sat on the couch, my mind racing, Lydia spoke up. Her voice was small, almost like she was afraid to break the silence. Peter, I know I messed up. I know I've hurt you in ways that can't be undone. But please, I need you to understand. I never meant to destroy everything we had. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her, wondering if I could ever truly forgive her for what she had done. The pain was still so fresh, and every time I looked at her, it was all I could think about. It was like a scar I couldn't escape. You don't get it, Lydia, I said, my voice quiet but filled with so much anger. It's not just about what you did. It's about everything that came before. The lies, the secrets. You didn't even think about me. You didn't even think about us. She flinched, like my words were a slap to her face. I know, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. I was selfish. I don't know why I did it. I was just confused. But that doesn't make it right. I know that now. I was so tired of hearing her say she was sorry and that she was confused. I didn't want her apologies anymore. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. But the more she spoke, the more I realized that I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear the full story. Maybe some things were better left unsaid. Maybe I didn't need to know everything about her affair. Maybe I could move on without dragging myself through the details. But then again, how could I ever truly move on without knowing what had happened? Without knowing why she felt the need to do this? The silence between us stretched on, both of us trapped in our own thoughts. I wanted to ask her more questions, but I couldn't bring myself to. What good would it do? What if the answers were worse than I imagined? What if I found out that I wasn't even the person she had truly wanted to be with in the first place? The uncertainty was killing me, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to fix us. That night, after hours of back and forth, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my thoughts racing. I kept replaying her confession in my mind, over and over, until it felt like I was drowning in it. My mind kept returning to the same question: how could I ever trust her again? When I woke up the next morning, I knew something had to change. I didn't know what that change would look like, but I couldn't keep living like this. The past few days had been nothing but a spiral into confusion and hurt. I didn't know if I could forgive her, and I didn't know if I even wanted to try. I had to make a decision. I had to decide if I was going to stay and work through this, or if it was time to walk away for good. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. The damage had already been done. The pieces of our life together had shattered, and I didn't know if I had the strength to pick them up. But somehow, I knew I had to try. For myself. For my own peace of mind. I needed to find a way to heal, whether that meant staying with Lydia or walking away from her once and for all. Either way, something was going to change. I thought I could handle this. I thought I could process the betrayal and somehow move forward, but as each day passed, it only got worse. I kept going through the motions, working, eating, pretending everything was fine, but inside, I was dying. The weight of Lydia's betrayal was too much to carry. It gnawed at me every second of every day. I could feel myself slowly losing control, unable to escape the suffocating reality of what had happened. Lydia seemed desperate to fix things. She tried everything: apologies, attempts at small gestures, trying to talk to me like nothing had changed. But everything felt so fake. I couldn't hear her words without imagining the man she'd kissed. I couldn't look at her without seeing the lies in her eyes. One evening, a week after the confrontation, she came to me with a look I hadn't seen in days. It was almost like she was giving up. There was no more pleading, no more false hope. Just resignation. "I can't keep doing this, Peter," she said quietly, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not." Her words stung. I wanted to snap at her, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, but instead, I just stared at her. I had no idea what she was talking about. Was she finally ready to face the consequences of what she'd done? Or was this just another attempt to avoid it all? "I don't know what to do anymore," she continued, her voice cracking. "I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't know how to fix it. I never wanted any of this to happen. I never wanted us to fall apart." But it already had. She didn't need to tell me how much she regretted it, because the truth was, I couldn't trust her anymore. I couldn't look at her without feeling like I was betraying myself. I stood up, trying to hold it together, but I felt like I was on the edge. "You can't fix this, Lydia," I said, my voice low but firm. "You can't fix what you've done. You can't just erase this. You can't just say I'm sorry and make it go away. This is permanent. I don't know if I can ever forget what you did." For the first time in a long while, Lydia looked defeated. She didn't try to argue, didn't try to make excuses. She just looked at me with tears in her eyes, as though she were finally realizing the depth of what she had lost. "I know," she whispered. "I know I've ruined everything. I've ruined us." That was the moment everything shifted. The words she had been saying, the endless apologies, finally felt like they meant something. But even then, it didn't feel enough. It didn't feel like enough to undo the hurt, to undo the broken trust, to undo the picture I had in my mind of her with him. "I don't know if I can stay with you, Lydia," I said, my voice trembling. It felt like a punch to the gut, but it was the truth. I didn't know if I could ever move past this. I didn't know if I could keep pretending everything was fine when my entire world had been torn apart. "I understand," she said, nodding quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to stay. But I can't make this decision for you. You have to decide what you want, Peter." And just like that, the wall between us became unbreakable. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I didn't know if there was even a path back for us. Could I ever truly forgive her? Could I ever look at her the same way? Could I ever trust her again? The doubt was suffocating, and all I wanted was peace. But peace wasn't something I could find with her. Not right now. Not in this moment. I walked out of the room without saying another word. My heart was heavy, my mind a whirlwind of confusion. But as I stepped out into the hallway, I knew one thing for sure. Everything was broken beyond repair. I wasn't sure how we would move forward, or even if we could. But I was starting to realize that maybe some things, some people, just weren't meant to be fixed. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest, but at the same time, it was as if I had just walked into a vast emptiness. Leaving the room that night was the hardest thing I'd ever done, yet it was the most necessary. The distance between Lydia and me had grown so much in such a short time that it felt like I was living in a parallel universe. I was there, but I wasn't. The days that followed were surreal. Lydia didn't try to push for any immediate resolution. It was like she'd accepted the truth, that things might be over between us. She kept her distance, but every time our paths crossed, it felt like there was an invisible thread pulling us together again, even though I had already made my decision. One evening, I sat in the living room staring at the clock on the wall. It was past midnight. I hadn't slept well in days. My thoughts, my doubts, they just kept circling in my head. I kept asking myself, what now? I hadn't spoken to anyone about what happened. Not a friend, not a family member. I couldn't bring myself to talk about it. There were moments where I would pick up my phone, ready to text my best friend Jake, but I'd stop myself. I didn't want to share this with anyone. I didn't want their pity, their judgment. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about me trying to figure out who I was now that everything had fallen apart. That night, Lydia came into the living room, sitting down across from me with a hesitant look in her eyes. I hadn't spoken to her in a few hours, and I could tell she was nervous. The tension in the room was thick, and neither of us knew what to say next. I've been thinking, Peter, she began, her voice trembling. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I am truly sorry. Not just for what happened with him, but for the way I treated you. You deserve so much better. I stayed quiet. I didn't want to hear her apologies anymore. I didn't know if I could listen to them without being consumed by the anger that had been building inside me. But at the same time, part of me wanted to hear her out. I wanted to understand why she did what she did, even if I didn't want to forgive her. I've been selfish, she continued, her voice breaking. And I know I've hurt you more than I can ever imagine. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Peter. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. And if you decide to leave, I'll understand. That was it. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. It was the first time she had openly acknowledged the possibility that I might leave. And in that moment, I realized that she wasn't just apologizing for the affair. She was apologizing for everything. Her neglect, her silence, her refusal to see how much I had been hurting. I stared at her, feeling the emotional fatigue seep into my bones. I didn't know if I could carry on with the weight of this betrayal. I didn't know if I could keep pretending to be in a relationship with someone who had shattered my trust. I don't know what to do, Lydia, I said, finally breaking the silence. I don't know if I can keep living like this. But I can't stay if there's no trust. I don't know how to move forward when everything feels broken. Lydia nodded, her eyes filling with tears again. I understand, she whispered. I just want you to know that I'm not trying to keep you in something that you can't fix. I love you, Peter, but I can't make this decision for you. You have to decide. Her words stung, but they were the truth. I couldn't keep hiding from the inevitable. Something inside me had already snapped, and no amount of apologies could put it back together. For the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. It wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It wasn't even about healing. It was about me finding peace, whether that meant leaving her or staying. But in that moment, I realized that I had been holding on to a relationship that wasn't what it once was. I had to decide if I could live with the aftermath of what she had done. And as the night dragged on, I knew that the decision would be the hardest one I'd ever have to make. But it was mine to make. The next morning, I made the call. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at a future I couldn't fully comprehend. The decision I made that morning wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right one for me. I didn't have all the answers, and I couldn't predict what would happen next, but I understood one thing. I wasn't going to live in this uncertainty anymore. I couldn't. For my own sake, for my own peace, I had to take control of my life. I walked into the living room where Lydia was sitting, her eyes still puffy from crying the night before. She was waiting for me, and I could see the vulnerability in her expression, but also a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. It was like she had finally realized the weight of her actions, and this time, she wasn't trying to justify herself. She was just waiting for me to make the final decision. I've thought about it a lot, Lydia. I began, my voice calm but steady. And I can't say I'm completely healed. I don't know if I'll ever be. But I know one thing. I'm not walking away from this relationship. Not yet. Her eyes widened, and she blinked in disbelief. Peter, are you sure? I nodded, feeling an unexpected surge of resolve. I'm sure. But it's not going to be easy. I can't just forget what happened. And I can't promise that I won't have doubts along the way. But I'm willing to try. For both of us. Lydia looked at me, her face softening as a mixture of relief and hope filled her eyes. She stood up slowly and walked toward me, taking my hands in hers. I don't deserve another chance, but I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm committed to us. I love you, Peter, and I'll never stop trying. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't going to be a smooth road ahead, and I knew there would be moments where the past would haunt us. But I realized something important in that moment. Healing takes time, and forgiveness doesn't come all at once. It's a process, and it's one that both of us would have to go through together. We talked for hours that night, not about the affair or the betrayal, but about the future, about what we wanted, what we needed from each other, and how we could rebuild what we had. It was the first real conversation we'd had in weeks, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were truly connecting again. Over the next few months, we worked on ourselves individually, but also on our relationship. We went to therapy together, something I never thought we would do. It was uncomfortable at first, but it helped. We learned how to communicate better, how to listen to each other, how to acknowledge our pain and move forward instead of burying it. Lydia made changes too. She stopped hiding behind excuses and took responsibility for her actions. I saw the genuine remorse in her actions, not just her words. Slowly, I began to trust her again, not in the same way as before, but in a way that was more grounded in reality. And as I saw her efforts, I realized that healing was a two-way street. It wasn't just about me forgiving her. It was about both of us growing stronger through the pain. Months passed, and with each day, I felt a little lighter. The relationship wasn't perfect. It wasn't the same as it was before, but it was something new, something real. I was learning to trust again, to love again, but also to protect my own heart in a way I hadn't before. And then one evening, as I looked at Lydia, sitting beside me on the couch, I realized how far we had come. It wasn't easy, but we had made it through. We had chosen to face the pain, to confront our demons, and to build something new from the ashes of the past. I don't know where this road will take us, I said, smiling softly. But I'm glad I'm walking it with you. Lydia smiled back, her eyes filled with love and a quiet certainty. Me too, Peter. Me too. And in that moment, I knew that even though the past had nearly torn us apart, the future was still ours to create. Together.